California edition. My name is Brad Pomerance, and we are joined today by Judy Chu. She is a member of the United States Congress, and recently President Obama offered his 7th State of the Union. I mean, plaudits to him. Most people thought, Democrats and Republicans, it was one of his best, if not his best. What did you think, Congresswoman?
Oh, I thought he was great. He came out swinging on positive programs that could turn this country around. And what I liked was his laser-like focus on the middle class, on looking at this income inequality that is really very, very bad for this country, and proposing things that would turn that around.
I want to ask you about health care. And the reason is, I remember at one point he talked about the number of Americans that are no longer uninsured. I'm not a partisan, but it's hard to deny those numbers. And so I'm wondering, how did that play in the room? Because the Affordable Care Act is so controversial, but, you know, the numbers don't lie. How did that play in the room?
Well, naturally, we on the Democratic side cheered.
Yeah.
We thought that was so fantastic. But I'm afraid that there are many Republicans who just have this kind of gut level thing about Obamacare. So even if the numbers are so very, very clear, they still can't take it.
We also know President Obama, talking about the middle class, focused on community colleges, put together a very bold proposal that would provide essentially free community college for students half-time, full-time, if they're looking for a vocational degree and or to transfer. The details are not clear yet. Maybe 75 paid by the feds, 25 by states. What's your sense of that proposal?
When he announced that, I just practically jumped out of my chair. I was so thrilled because I taught in the community college for 20 years.
I forgot that, right.
And I know the great potential that the community college has to get people on the right track. People who otherwise would not have a chance. People who have been put out of work, or single mothers, or people who are the first in their family to go to college. So this is a great proposal.
Right. At the same time, though, you may remember in the last Congress, President Obama proposed that there be a mandatory universal preschool for 4-year-olds. The proposal died on the vine. You know, we now have a Congress that's more Republican, controlled by Republicans. And while many may support a proposal like this, Democrat or Republican, I mean, what's the chances of success at this stage?
Well, what will make the difference are the American people. If the American people think this is a great idea and they push it and it becomes something that becomes part of the American buzz, I think there is a possibility for something to get done.
In terms of buzz, there was a lot of buzzing about the fact that President Obama talked about gays and lesbians, bisexuals, those are words we've heard from elected leaders, even presidents, and transgender.
Yes.
That's not a word I had heard from a president. In fact, when he said it, I turned to my daughter, my 7th grader was watching, and I thought, I wonder if that's ever been said by a president. We know President Reagan never said HIV or AIDS when he was president, and sure enough, it had never been spoken.
Yeah.
What do you think of that, transgender?
I thought it was great, and in fact, it was historic. The pundits went and looked at history, and it was the first time that it had ever been said in the State of the Union speech.
Do you wonder, though, if it was a bridge that should not have been crossed? I mean, look, there's no doubt the country is, even in redder states, kind of swinging towards increased civil rights for gays and lesbians. I think the transgender community is still a community that is, it's not clear. People don't know what to make of the transgender community. So do you think maybe he went too far on this one?
Well, I think there's greater acceptance in our nation. We see more and more states that are approving same-sex marriage.
Right.
And there is more ability to see different lifestyles, including that Golden Globe winning
right, yes,
series, Transparent.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's funny, in some ways, one could say that the fact that Transparent was kind of pushed into the pop culture made it easier for Mr. Obama to make that statement. I also know, and I look at Twitter to see what people are tweeting about, a lot of Jewish Americans were heartened by the fact that President Obama talked about increasing anti-Semitism in Europe. I think many Jewish Americans and friends of and allies of Jews in Israel were surprised that he brought that up. Were you?
I was thrilled. Not surprised, because he is a person of compassion. But I was thrilled because it is an important time to say this, considering what happened. I mean, people are still shaken up by what happened with regard to the deaths of the people at the kosher market,
Right.
as well as at Charlie Hebdo. And for him to say something was really important.
At the same time, I did hear some criticism about the absence of extended conversation regarding ISIS, regarding radical Islamists, whatever that may mean. And some folks felt as if maybe the president should have delved a little deeper into the issue so Americans have a sense of the battle we face. What's your sense?
I actually thought he went into quite a bit of detail into ISIS and our fight against terrorism. He touched upon it enough so that we could get some idea that we are making some headway in that area, but that it's an extremely serious thing for us, and that we need to have a greater discussion in Congress, in particular on a reauthorization of the use of military force.
We also know, and I'm sure you remember, after 9/11, there were attacks in America against Muslims or those perceived to be Muslim. I remember there were some Sikhs that were attacked really close by. After the Charlie Hebdo attack, there were attacks against Muslims in France. And while America may not have a large Muslim population, these individuals, presumably, they're Americans. I mean, just like all of us. And so, do we need to start looking also at inclusion of Muslim brothers and sisters, Jewish brothers and sisters, Asian, whatever it may be, Asian, because I have to think that if one is of Muslim descent, there could be a little fear, because they don't support that doctrine, but they could be seen to support it.
Oh, I definitely think there's fear, especially after those attacks.
Right.
That's why I thought it was very good that President Obama also talked about stopping the anti-Muslim sentiment and making sure that people know that there are many, many patriotic Muslims around.
After the State of the Union, we know that your friends on the Republican side of the aisle have been speaking about abortion and trying to limit access to abortion. It's a very difficult issue. It's hard to deny. What do the Democrats make of the fact that the Republicans have put this in the forefront? Just a few weeks after they took control, that they chose to try to pull back the time with which a woman could have an abortion, define or rape, and a requirement that rape be reported. What's your sense?
I actually couldn't believe that they would go down that pathway. In fact, they wanted to put in a bill that would limit abortions after 20 weeks, saying that the fetus is capable of pain. And actually, the Republican women felt that this went too far and asked for some changes to this bill. Eventually, they discovered that they actually didn't have enough votes to pass this. Because there was so much dissension amongst their Republicans, and so they pulled the bill.
But what about this whole notion that the Republicans spoke of in the run-up to the midterm, that we want to get items passed and sent to the president that he can sign? Again, I'm not a partisan, but do you see evidence of that?
I don't see evidence. The very first act was to undo President Obama's executive order on immigration, basically deporting everybody. And the second action was to put in the Keystone Pipeline, which would run right through our country, and the oil would not even be used for us. And then the third was this anti-abortion action.
So one could argue the Republicans kind of gave red meat to their base, and if they needed to do that, they did. What about in the future? I mean, is there? I'm sure that you have friends on the Republican side. Are you hoping to work with them? Do you see places for compromise?
I do think that there are many reasonable Republicans, and we work together on such things as cybersecurity and on patent issues, intellectual property and protections. And they are very desirous of getting something done on these.
You'll come back?
Yes.
She is Judy Chu. I'm Brad Pomerance. It's California Edition.